Today, we are diving into a quiet revolution, one that happened inside one of the world's biggest Buddhist movements. It's a really cool story about how one man, Master Hsing Yun, basically looked at centuries of tradition and said, you know what, we can do this better, creating a brand new and much more inclusive role for believers. And this whole story really kicks off with a pretty big paradox. A core central teaching in Buddhism is that everyone, and I mean everyone, has the potential for enlightenment. All beings are equal. So how on earth did a system pop up where monks and nuns were way up here and everyday folks were, well, kind of down here in a supporting role? That's the big question we're going to unpack today.
Okay, so to really get the change, we have to look at how things used to be. For centuries, this concept, monks respected, laity lowly, was pretty much the standard. Now, in this model, lay believers were super important, don't get me wrong, but their main job was to protect the faith, provide financial support, food, things like that. The actual teaching and practice, that was left to the monastics. This slide just lays it all out in a nutshell. On the left, you've got that old view, but on the right, that's Master Hsing Yun's vision. He completely flipped the script. He took monks respected, laity lowly, and turned it into mutual respect for monastics and laity. And here's the game changer. He shifted the job of the laity from just protecting the faith to actively propagating it. He saw them as true partners, like the two wheels of a cart. You absolutely need both to move forward. Now, you might be thinking this was just some modern idea, trying to update an old religion, but that's not it at all. Master Hsing Yun argued that this vision of equality was actually getting back to the original spirit of the teachings. He found the proof for this pretty radical change deep inside ancient scriptures. And here's the scriptural proof right here. This line is from the ancient Huayan Sutra, and it says that fundamentally, our minds, the Buddha, and all living things are the same. There's no real difference. This became the philosophical bedrock for his whole argument that everyone, not just a handful of monks, has what it takes to understand and even teach the Dharma. So how did he take that ancient idea and make it real for people today? With this, he would encourage his followers all the time to declare, I am Buddha. Now, this wasn't about being arrogant or egotistical, not at all. It was a really radical act of self-empowerment. It was his way of telling believers, hey, take ownership of your spiritual path. See yourself as an active participant, not just a passive follower. Okay, so you've got the philosophy down, but how do you actually make it happen in the real world? The next step was absolutely crucial, building a practical, step-by-step system for empowerment. It was officially time to turn students into teachers. But, of course, there was a huge roadblock. For centuries, this one little saying was used to keep lay people in their place. It basically created this fear that if non-monastics, the white-robed, started preaching, it was a sign that the faith was about to collapse. This idea was a major hurdle that had to be tackled head-on. So the big question became, where did that spooky warning even come from? Well, after a bit of digging, it turned out the sutra it supposedly came from was apocryphal. That's just a fancy way of saying its origins were sketchy and it wasn't part of the official, reliable scriptures. By putting this out, Master Hsing Yun pretty much debunked the whole warning, clearing the way for his new vision. And this is the brilliant system he created, the Dharma lecturer system. This was no casual suggestion. It was a serious, structured, institutional path. First, you had to qualify as a dedicated member. Then you went through intense training. We're talking rigorous study and public speaking workshops. After that, you had to pass formal exams to get certified, and only then were you officially authorized to teach. This gave lay teachers real legitimacy and a respected role in the community. But creating an army of new teachers was only half the battle. You also had to completely change the places where people gathered. The goal was to shift Buddhism from something static you did inside a temple to something dynamic you did out in the community. The motto was, activity is life. A temple shouldn't just be for quiet chanting. It should be a bustling school for everyone. And this timeline shows just how serious they were about that. It all started with a single kindergarten back in 1956. Then, in the 80s, came urban Buddhist colleges for busy working adults. From there, it just exploded into a global network of 5 universities. And today, there are even online academies, making it all accessible from anywhere in the world. It's a total system of lifelong learning, designed to meet people wherever they are in life. So, what's the ultimate impact of all these incredible changes? Well, it was about totally flipping the script on how people saw Buddhism in their daily lives.
From a religion you only thought about at the end of life, to a practical guide that's right there with you from day one.
For a really long time, a lot of people only connected Buddhism with funerals. It was seen as something for the elderly, the dying, the afterlife. You know, when there was a death in the family, that's when you'd call the monks. But for happy moments, for life's big celebrations, it just wasn't really part of the conversation.
So to fix this, a whole new set of life rituals were created. Look at this, ceremonies for every single stage of life. Naming ceremonies for babies, coming-of-age rituals for teenagers, beautiful Buddhist weddings, even anniversary blessings for couples. This wove the faith directly into life's happiest moments, making it a constant, joyful companion. And in the end, it really all boils down to this one, simple, humble, but totally revolutionary goal. In his own words, Master Hsing Yun said his hope was just to make things a little more equal. I mean, that quote just captures everything about his life's work, this quiet but incredibly determined effort to restore a balance that he believed was always meant to be there. And that leaves us with one last big question to chew on. Sure, this story is about one specific Buddhist movement, but the idea behind it is universal, isn't it? It really forces us to ask, how can any ancient tradition, with all its deep-rooted structures and hierarchies, find ways to evolve and empower all of its members in our fast-changing modern world? Definitely something to think about.